Welcome to Advanced Programming and indeed Games Programming using Android and C++. It's a co-taught second year module offered in a number of the computing programs, and the idea behind this particular lecture or session is one of the longer ones, is to set out what it is we're going to try to achieve within the module, and also how I think we can best go about trying to achieve it. It's only right and proper that I welcome you to the module. It's hopefully going to be an interesting, enjoyable and educational experience. This lecture is going to set out really the overarching aims of what it is we're going to try to do, and I want to talk a little bit about why we're trying to do this and also how we're going to try to do it. So hopefully by the end of the lecture you'll know how the module's set up and what it is we're hoping to get out of it. By way of adding a little bit of additional detail to this, so in answer to the question, what does this module aim to do? It's a very straightforward answer. Module aims to improve your programming skills. This is what it is all about, and in essence, maybe there's different aspects to the programming skills, but what we are really all about is improving programming skills, and in particular, your programming skills. How are we going to go about doing this? Well, we're going to do it through a project, and I'm going to be asking you in teams to develop an Android game. And the assessment at the end, we don't have any written exams, the assessment at the end is going to be based solely on the project that you develop throughout the year. Now, in as far as you're going to have me throughout the year, I might as well start off by telling you a little bit about the way or the style of sort of teaching, of lecturing that I have. I mean, you're going to get to experience it in quite a lot of detail, but I'll set up front how I believe it is. First of all, in terms of things like lectures, whilst I may be recording this, inside actual lectures, the vast majority of them, I don't want to simply talk at you for a long period of time. I don't think that's a particularly valuable use of our time together. But I do want to hear your thoughts and opinions. I do want to try to understand what you're thinking about, what challenges you're having, how you're looking at things. And we'll do this within the lectures. I also value that just by talking to you outside of them or through emails. You'll find that within the lecture sections, I like asking questions. So I'll probably ask quite a few questions and get you to do quite a few exercises. But I rarely ask questions that are binary, that have a right or a wrong answer. I don't think they're particularly interesting questions to ask. Most of the time, I'll ask questions which are opinionated, where you will have an opinion on it, hopefully, and you can say what your opinion is and why do you hold that particular opinion. I'm reasonably friendly, but I suppose you can come to your own conclusion with regard to that as we go through the module. By way of some utterly, and it is utterly, irrelevant information about me, if you really want to understand the type of person that I am, 3 little pointless snippets. In my office rather, on the walls, I have a collection of classic Intel chipsets, so the processors and the motherboards, from the 8086 to the 286, the 386 and the 486. These are things that are computers that I grew up with in terms of my youth. And actually the picture you see of me here, in terms of the background, is the 386 motherboard. Other relevant piece of information, I suppose I'm that generation that actually grew up with games, one of the first generations that did. I am a bit of a gamer, and I've spent an awful lot of time playing Team Fortress 2. It's one of my diversionary hobbies. And in all honesty, as a kid, when I wanted to grow up, if you had asked me when I was young what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would have said a mad scientist. In all honesty, that's what I wanted to do, to become. Living in a sort of a tower on top of a hill with lightning crashing outside. So, yeah, mission half accomplished. So let's have a look at something a little bit more meaningful and useful. And it is how we will go about learning on this module. And I think this is important. I haven't talked about what exactly we will be learning, because I think it is more important to set out how we will go about learning in the first place. And that's actually fundamental really to any module, about how you can best approach it by way of picking up and learning whatever is associated with that module. And this is an exercise that we will do in the lectures, because I think it's quite a good framing one. It actually came, or I first encountered it when an educationalist, Phil Race, came to Queen's University, and he delivered a workshop and got us to do this particular exercise. So if you want, you can scribble down your answers to this. I'm going to be 3 quick questions. First one is to write down something new that you learnt to do recently, and it can be anything new. I mean, we constantly learn new things. So attending a module is one way of learning. The hobbies that we have are other things that we learn. So it can be anything at all. But the key bit is it's something that you learned to do recently, something new, either a new hobby or something you got better at. Recent's important because you need to think about how you went about learning it. The second question is write down the reasons why you learnt the thing that you learnt. And the third one is how did you go about learning it? So it's a what, a why, and a how. And it's worthwhile pausing here and actually going through and answering those 3 different questions. Once you've answered them, and if you did this with a large group of people and you went around and you looked at the types of replies that they came back with, there's a striking amount of correlation that comes out. So people learn a wide range of different types of activities. But when you look at the reasons why they go about learning it, it generally boils down to one of 2 different reasons. It's either useful. If we learn this here, it gives us a useful return. It is beneficial in some way for us. Or the second reason is that it's fun. We enjoy doing it. It is our hobby. We like learning this. We like getting better. And for the vast majority of activities, if you want to learn effectively, we need to have that drive. We have to either view it as being useful or something that we just enjoy for its intrinsic sake. When you then look at the third question about, well, how did you learn it? Generally, the answers in this are even more stark. We, and I mean we as human beings, as people, from infants all the way through to pensioners, we learn things by doing them. That's the way our brain is wired up. Initially, when we try to do it, we maybe don't do it particularly well. As we practice it, our brain changes, it gets wired differently, and we learn through practice. And then ultimately, we hopefully master the thing that it is that we're trying to learn. Now, this is how we, as mentioned, as human beings, how we learn. And it's universal. And given that, it is quite right and proper to say, okay, so if we learn things that are useful and fun, and if we learn by doing, then how are we going to try to take those and make it apply or make it applicable within this particular module? And here's how we're going to do it. So the doing bit, first of all, I want you to improve your programming skills. I'm not going to put on a whole lot of lectures and activities where I talk about programming. Instead, I'm going to get you, hopefully, to actually do a lot of programming. And that's why we focus all of the course around a very large project. I want you to spend many hours throughout the module coding, programming. And by virtue of doing that, programming, you will improve over time. Lectures in this sense are going to be structured around the project. They're all going to be about supporting the project. So the project, that doing activity, is at the heart of this module. This is what it is all about. It is doing programming. A bit about the motivation, useful and fun. Now, games, and this is the reason why we're developing a game. For most people, games are an enjoyable, fun activity. And hopefully you'll find when you get into the programming, that actually the programming of games itself is also very enjoyable. Now, I could set a particular project, but I don't know what particular type of game that you find most fun. So I'm going to let you decide yourself. You'll see when we look at the marking scheme that there's quite a lot of flexibility. You'll get to dictate or control some of the marking scheme. But in essence, it'll be up to you to pick a project that you want to do, that you're going to find fun and enjoyable. Now, the bit down at the very bottom of the slide, we're doing this, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the lectures, that the type of activity that we're engaging in and the way that we'll go about learning programming is going to be something that the vast majority of people will find to be very useful on their placement year and their year out in industry, and indeed within later modules. But that's the type of thing you'll find out or experience later on. As a way of trying to wrap this together, I've set out a learning contract for the module. So this is the types of things that you can expect of me, and conversely, what I will expect of you. And I would suggest that if we both adhere to the learning contract, we will all have a very successful conclusion to the module. So let's have a look at the contract. So, things that you can expect of me within this particular contract. In general, I'm here to help and will be supportive and non-judgmental. So my role, if you like, within the module is to help you become a better programmer. That's what I'm about. I will be supportive. I will be non-judgmental. There's no such thing as a bad, wrong answer. We learn by making mistakes, and we learn by looking at those mistakes and asking, okay, how can we improve upon it? So if you're stuck at something and you think, oh, I shouldn't really be stuck there, I should know it. Look, don't feel worried or concerned about coming to me and saying, okay, I just don't get that. That's fine. That's all part of learning. So every opportunity that we have to improve is a good opportunity. So hopefully you'll see, in terms of all of the interaction we have within the lectures or outside, I'm not going to be judgmental. I'm going to try to be fully supportive. Within the lectures, I'm not going to regurgitate the material. I'm going to, the reason all of these things are recorded, other than letting you sort of revisit the material, is I'm going to assume that you will be listening to these. There will be quite a lot of the lecture material that we won't cover within the lectures. I'm just going to say, go and listen to that in your own time. Instead, within the lectures, I want to spend a lot more time looking at problems, getting you doing exercises, asking questions, exploring different aspects. I think that's a more useful use of our time. Extremely happy to answer any questions that you have within lectures or elsewhere. So if you're not certain about something, feel free to ask away, please. And finally, within the assessment, and we're thinking here about the assessment that we have at the end of the module, I will be fair, I will be honest, and I will be consistent in all of the assessment, and you would expect nothing less from me. So in return, what things am I going to expect of you? That you will attend the lectures and explore whatever the suggested weekly activities are. So I would like you at the lectures, and if I'm sending around an email saying, look, you really should maybe have a look at this project and can have a look at how this bit is coded, I'm going to assume that you will do that. And most importantly, I'm also going to assume that you're going to work on your project throughout the whole module. We do have a long period of time in which to develop this game, but we will need that long period in time because this project is large. It is not the type of thing that you can wait until week 6 before getting stuck into it. So I need you, and you will need yourself to really engage from the start of the module and to work consistently throughout the duration of the module. Now, if we both adhere to these, so I do the things that I say I will, and you do the things that I'm hopefully expecting from you, then I think this will be a successful module for all concerned, as mentioned. So finally, what exactly do we have within the module? What are we going to look at? We've set out this bit of project. We set out how we're going to go about learning on that project. But let's actually have a look at the, if you like, the new knowledge and skills that that project will embed and will help you develop. So there's a number of different programming topics that we're going to have a look at. And you see them appearing at the bottom of the screen. So the projects and the process by way we create those projects will enable us to explore a number of different aspects. And the lecture information, if you like, the course information will touch upon these. So the first one is contemporary software development. Second one then is Android app development, then 2D game development. Then we'll look at performance and efficiency, and also user experience design. And the next few slides, we look at each of these in a little bit more detail. So first up is contemporary software development. And by that we mean the agile and the lean approaches that increasingly software houses are using, and probably forms the mainstay of most software development nowadays. Agile and lean, I mean, they're different, but they're complementary in terms of sitting well aside one another as an approach to go about developing software. They're fairly sophisticated ways of developing software, and within this module we're going to look at some of the fundamentals, and more than look, we're actually going to put into practice some of the fundamental agile and lean development techniques. It's also going to be a team-based module, and most, if not all, of development done within the industry is team-based. And certainly within things like your year in industry, you will be within a team-based environment. So there'll be good opportunity throughout the module to have a look at the process whereby we can put together a reasonably large piece of software. Comes in the name of the module. It's an Android game, so to do that we need to have a look at the Android framework itself. Having a look at, I suppose, about how you can interact with tablets, about how the basics of setting up an application. We're not really going to delve too much into Android in depth, because we're looking at putting a game on top. So we're going to understand enough of Android to provide us with the ability to write a game on it. In that regard, I suppose we're somewhat scratching the surface. Android there's a massive range of SDKs available with it, and you can tap into whatever ones you want to, but there's a reasonably small subset that we need to look at if we want to get a game up and running within Android. And leading on to that, we will look at how we actually can write a game, and that's going to touch upon how do we design one, the types of architectures that we have, about the different types of graphical effect that we may want to put within a game, about how the game objects actually can interact with one another, and things like artificial intelligence, which give us a way of bringing to life the engines that we may have within our game. In the second half of the module, so this is later on, whenever we've got the project up and we've covered the basics of Android development, the basics of game development, and you're stuck into your projects, at that point we're then going to think about performance and efficiency, and these are really our two different sides of the same coin, that high performance also equates to high efficiency, and if we want high efficiency we need high performance. We're going to use C++ as the language whereby we will explore performance and efficiency. It's a very nice language. It's a language that's slightly lower level than Java, but because it's lower level, it gives us a chance to look in more detail at how the code that we write gets to be executed, how it gets to be set out within memory. And being able to look at it at that level, we can see the things that work well and the things that have a high cost associated with them. So we're going to look at C++ as our way of performance and efficiency, but the lessons that we're learning from that will really apply across all programming languages. And finally, also in the latter stages of the module, we will have a look at UX design. UX stands for user experience. It's a very broad area, but we're really here going to be looking at how we as users interact with software. So how we navigate and see information, the types of things that often we miss, how we think about problems and how we make decisions. And all of those factor into how we go about designing a program so that it has an intuitive, natural feeling user interface, that the user can use the software and it just works for them. It's easy to say, but it's actually a very difficult thing to accomplish, to have software that feels effortless and very natural. But we'll have a look at some of the issues and some of the challenges behind designing software that has that overall outcome. We do have a module handbook associated with the module, and it gives more information on all of the topics that we have covered so far, or indeed will be covering within any bit of this talk. So certainly you would want to download and to read the module handbook. Covers the learning objectives, the structure, and I'll give you a weekly breakdown of what it is we're planning throughout the module, so do have a bit of a look at that. Overview of the project, we'll be looking at some of those aspects in the next talk. How it's assessed, recommended read it, contact information. So hopefully it's your one-stop shop that contains all of the core information about the module. So do please make sure to explore that and to keep coming back to it, because it should prove useful throughout the whole module. So by way of recommended reading, whilst this is a doing module, whilst I want you to spend a lot of time programming, and whilst there is a wealth of fantastic internet resources, and we will be making use of a wide range of those, I've also recommended a number of books that are worthwhile getting, because they can take you through in a more detailed step-by-step basis quite a few of the areas that we're going to explore. So first one up is it actually is an Android programming book, and it's the Big Nerd Ranch Guide to Android Programming. We really will only be touching upon the first few chapters within this. That's all we need to give us a sufficient infrastructure to write a game within Android. The rest of the book, it'll look at a lot of the different features and APIs that Android has. So it's a useful one if you want to explore Android programming in more depth and to develop apps beyond gaming apps, sort of your more traditional UI-based apps. We also have a recommended textbook for Android games programming, and it's Beginning Android Games, the second edition of that one. This is very useful. It approaches it in a particularly nice way of producing an interface that you can sit on top of most mobile platforms, not necessarily Android. Sort of extracts out the details and have a look at how that then maps onto the Android framework. A good bit of the book is of direct use to us. It also very usefully goes on to look at OpenGL ES, and that's what you would use if you want to have hardware accelerated graphics running on your Android platform. A little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more advanced, but it's the type of thing that some of the teams may want to look at whenever you've got their basic game functionality up and running. And the final book I've recommended here is C++, A Beginner's Guide. Second edition is actually from 2003. It's a reasonably old book. There is a third edition in being prepared at the minute, and I'm not sure when it comes out. It may come out during the duration of this module. It is a fantastic book. It may claim to be a beginner's guide, but it's a beginner's guide from the perspective of an expert C++ programmer. So it doesn't assume any prior knowledge, but it looks at topics in a good amount of detail, and it gets at some of the key underlying complexities behind why you might code things in one way or another. So it's a very, very good book to learn good C++ programming from. So strongly recommend that you get these books, because they will serve you well throughout the duration of this module and indeed beyond. So just by way of rounding things off, some lecture times and dates. Again, they're in the module handbook, but we'll briefly cover them here. You can see the lecture times the first semester in this. Second semester dates are in the handbook, but this is on your timetable anyway. What isn't on the timetable, but there'll be a free gap for it. There are optional drop-in advisories in my office. If you want to find me, I'm in 14 Malone Road, room at the back of the house on the first floor. And that's a Monday and a Thursday. So if you do want to pop along and have a chat with me about any specific area or topic, then feel free to come along to those. It shouldn't clash with anything on your timetable. Beyond that, you can email or just pop in general if you want, but I'll keep those slots free for people who do want to come over. And then finally, some important dates. There's a hand in October, end of week 3, where we give details of your team and an outline of the initial game that you want to develop. And then a very few other ones as we go through the first into the second semester. And Monday, 16th of March will be your full game submission. And then for the rest of that week, we'll be doing some Vivas, but we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the module. Whenever you get a bit of time, you'll want to have a good read, a bit of a ponder of a document that is produced, or the content rather, is produced by students who have taken the module previously, and it's their advice to you. So at the end of the module delivery, and you'll be asked to do this whenever you get to the end, I asked the students a number of questions to sort of think about how things have changed, what they've learned. And there's one of the sections which invites them to pass on any useful information that they have to future cohorts. So to a certain extent, it's their words of wisdom. And the module has changed over the years, so some of the advice maybe isn't 100% relevant, but the bulk of it, 95% of it, is indeed very relevant to you and to your project. It's worthwhile reading this here because this is feedback from people who have taken it previously, and most often they are looking at the challenges they faced and how they would do things differently by way of helping themselves out. It's very, very easy to read it and go, yeah, that all makes sense. Yeah. The difficult bit, though, is not only to sort of accept that it's good advice, but actually to act upon that advice. So 3 key things to take away from this particular talk. First one, this module, it is all about making you a better, more capable, more competent programmer. That's what it's about. In terms of the devil being in the detail, as with all things, have a look at the module handbook. It covers in more detail everything that we've talked about by way of this particular presentation. So you will want to look at that, to read about it, and to keep it handy, because it should be a useful point of reference. And finally, do set aside some time to look at what previous students have recommended, their words of advice. It's actually quite interesting. Quite a lot of their thoughts are very useful, and you will want to sort of look at that and to think, okay, well, how am I going to approach it differently to avoid whatever problems they have encountered? Now, the next talk after this is one that looks at the project in more detail. So you may want to have a bit of a listen to that if you want to look at how the project's assessed, the type of game you'd be developing, and so on.